That oil pump's definitely leaking from one of the seal, either the pump seal or the shaft seal from the gearbox, but either way it's got to come out and be clean. Also notice the yellow dot there, meaning it's a 400 pump. Bit of grunge down the bottom there, so it just needs a good refurb. I took the pump priming screw out, and I don't know what to describe that oil colour as, but it's old. Also, the hoses that go to the carburetor and to the oil box were sort of, didn't want to come through. There's a rubber grommet in there in between the cases, and I don't want to ruin that. I'm not going to keep the hoses, but I don't want to ruin that, so I sprayed a bit of CRC just so it would slide, otherwise it just sort of wanted to stick. Also, impact drives are the only way to deal with these Phillips head screws. On the pump itself, all of them. Just a few things I want to mention when cleaning gaskets off is that, so I use with these razor blades, and that's fine, but when you do it, one of the things I try to do is to get an angle that works. If you go too tight and it digs in, you go too shallow and nothing happens now. But that's not the big deal. The big deal is, if you can imagine this being the sealing area that has to seal, if I was to scratch this way, I would put a little tiny line straight through there, and that just makes it a lot harder for that paper gasket to seal that off. So I'm going to presume that I'm doing this, that I'm going to make little scratches. I'm just going to presume it. So if I make the scratches this way, any oil that wants to leak out then has to make it up to here, then has to make it out, whatever. It just makes it a lot harder. So always, I don't know if you want to call it against the grain, but just make sure that you clean it off so that, make that nice and smooth, so that you're never going across it. You're always going sideways to it. So big areas like this, that oil's still leaking out of it. Anyway, just work your way around, just slowly do it like that and you'll get there. I just pulled the oil pump out of my DT400. Now a lot of these are the Yamaha autolube pumps much the same. Some earlier models have like a nylon wheel there that you can turn to help prime the pump, but basically most of the pumps are the same. Oil comes from your reservoir tank into there, and that fills it up. You can, if you want to just get brand new pump and you want to prime it, you just undo the thing here, and that. This has already been pulled apart and cleaned, so I'm just sort of doing this to go through this process. So you undo that and oil will dribble out of there. Put it back in again when you want it to stop. That fills up all the passages inside there and primes it. Now when the pump's operating, it pushes the oil out of here and it goes into your carburetor, and that's all good. Now there is, inside here, there is a spring and ball, like there's a spring and a ball bearing in there, and the idea is that the ball bearing pushes up and the oil can flow out of it, and that's all good. And then when there's no more movement going on inside there, the ball bearing closes off so it doesn't backflow and drain the hose to the carburetor out, so the next time you start the bike, the hose is completely full all the way to the carburetor. That's the theory of that. And this is the side that normally has that little wheel there, but this model is just a later model and it's blanked off. Okay, the cable comes down and here and wraps around here and goes to there, and that just you put the accelerator on and it pulls it like that. And the idea is that it keeps the tension, that there is a spring just inside there, and that spring's sole purpose is to keep tension on the accelerator cable. You've got to remember that one cable here goes off to a junction box, another cable goes from the carburetor to a junction box, and they both get pulled evenly from the throttle. So that just keeps that cable taut so that it's always in the right spot. Now there is some adjustment going on here that you've got to work with, but that's all in the manual. Now this end here, that is to pull this apart. Oh, by the way, how that works is that this is one part here, and that part there is a shaft. You can see how that pumps up and down like that. There's a little cam inside there, and that, as it goes round and round and round from the worm drive here. Can you see the drive in there? Let's have a look. And let's have a look. There you go. That hooks up to the worm drive inside there, and that just goes up and that turns it, and the cam goes up and down, and that just pumps the fuel. Right, pull this apart. Now, just to pull that apart, need to undo the top one there. That might be a little bit tight. As I said, this has already been pulled apart once, so it's pretty good. There are a few things to watch out for here. Make sure you don't lose those things. If you've done this for the first time, just keep an eye on it. That there, you could always tell which way around it goes because there's some wear marks on the bottom there. That's smooth, so that if you want to put it back exactly the same way. Now the next thing are some very fine washers. Now this is where the factory sets it as to how much pumping it should start off. See that one there? That's really thin. That's wafer thin. So the one here that's a little bit thicker, and then the one here is quite thick. Now your bike, your pump, depending on which motor you have it for, you could have it for a 50cc, 125, 175, 250, 400. They're all much the same, but the thicknesses will vary depending on your pump stroke and how it presets at the factory. So that comes off like that, and that just now, there you go, that pumping action there. Now this next one here, you've got to take this little locator pin thing out here that stops it from going any further. That, be careful with that one. I thought a little thing, I'll take it off with a little shifter, but as soon as I started to do that, it went soft on me. Oh no. I couldn't find a socket that fitted, so the best thing I come up with was this big shifter. And the idea of that big shifter is it clamps down when it's ready to go. So, and I got it off with that, not a problem. Now I've got to just get this off, just undo it again, take the pressure off it, push it down a little bit. Now that is not in there tight because I've already done. They must when they put it together, put it in with a Loctite. No, it's still too tight for my fingers. Hold that down. One thing I did say, there we go. One thing I didn't mention was that these oil pumps are colour coded, and I had some yellow paint here which signifies the 400, but in the cleaning process I've sort of washed that off. Now that, as I said, is spring loaded, but only that way. So the spring comes off, there is a little hole. Oops, I'll take, there's a locating hole there, that's not a problem. There's a locating hole here that comes out when it's playing properly. There we go, that comes out. That's all, they're both the same both sides, so that just goes away. Now some earlier models also had a raised lump there where they would put like a split pin through to stop the cable from falling out. This one here uses that length there, and it pushes in there, and the cable would then get covered over by that pushing going over the top of it. So when you rebuild it, you've got to be careful that the cable goes underneath and it goes in there, and just got to work that one out. That only goes on one way, as you can see. It's the same way it came off, which is this way around. Now put that aside. I've already taken this apart, so I've only got the one screw here. Now I've got to be a bit careful here. Now there's some things going on here that I just want to go through. Right, taking it off that way. There is, I'll come back to that, right? On this side here, I'll keep it in this way. Come on, off you come. That one is just a, there you go. One here just to keep a bit of tension on it, just that wavy washer, and another washer so that it doesn't wear the aluminium out, because that sits up against the aluminium case there. So the hard one against the case there, smooth surface, then the wavy one just to keep it some tension on there. Then there's nothing, you can't do anything there. The next bit, it comes out here, there's a seal in here. Oops, that seal didn't come out, not that matters. That seal there needs replacing, and I have a, where did I put it? From Yambits, a repair kit that has all the parts I need in there. So that's there. That seal will just pop that out, pop the new one in the same way. As long as you keep an eye on that, you should be fine. This bit here is a spring. Now this just keeps tension on the whole lot while it's in there. It does nothing to do with the throttle. This is just tension for the whole mechanism for the cam. So I take the spring away. Now there's a washer next. Now that washer, because there's a bit of like a split pin here to hold that in place, or an O-ring sort of thing. that metal there, if you just had the spring against that, you wouldn't sit properly, so they just put a little bit of a metal washer there, so then that pushes evenly against it. So once again, it makes sense, that comes off. No need to service that or change that in any way. Let's see that there could be a mark on there where that O-ring wears a lot on there, and if that is the case, then that could be a reason for replacing it, but that metal seems to be quite hard and seems to be quite good. So this bit now, just replace that, I'll put that aside. Now we're back to this bit. That is the gear drive that goes from your motor and turns it one direction, right? So it turns it, and as it turns it, you can see the cam comes in and pushes up. That's when it sucks, pushes it out. That pushing out now goes to the motor. Sucks from inside the body of the mechanism, pushes it up to the motor. Sucks, pushes, sucks, pushes. Okay? So this next thing is just a big washer to hold that all in place. So one side, I don't know if you can see it, would have a little bit of a marking where it goes against the body there. The other side has a bit of a marking down low there, but I don't think it matters which way around you put that back in, but just if you want to be particular, that's what you'll do. Now, the next one here is this drive. The drive comes off, that's nice and solid. You can't see any markings on that, it doesn't seem to get any. But be real careful. There's a little pin here. Now, some models have a spring in the pin, mine just has a long pin. That dropped on the floor and I had to get on the hands and knees and find it. So just be careful of that one, that you don't lose that one. Now, how does this pump? Now remember, this goes in and out like this. There is another little O-ring there, or little seal in there that seals against that shaft, and all it is that sucks, pushes, sucks, pushes, sucks, pushes. So as that goes round, now it's sucking, now it's pushing, now it's sucking, now it's pushing. That corresponds with these holes in here. Now remember I said there is one that goes to the motor. If you look at that as just a hole, the spring and ball mechanisms in there, comes down here, and the drilling would have stopped there. Then they would have got with the drill, and they drilled it straight in through this way. That went straight in to line up with that hole there. It doesn't come out this side, but it would have lined up with that hole there. So we now have a hole that runs all the way through here, through that bit there, halfway through, and it stops about here. Now, oil comes in here and comes out because it's sealed off here because of this. Because of that, it's largely sealed off and it can't come through anywhere. Oil goes from your tank into there and just dribbles out the top here and fills this void here and just keeps it all lubricated. It doesn't do much else but just sort of keeps it lubricated. That's sort of a dead area in that respect. It will run through if you undo your drain plug there. It will fill up this whole void, take air out of the top and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. So how does it get into the pumping? Well, you can't see it, but there's another hole drilled from that back area there, which is all closed off, drilled through to about here, not all the way through though, as you can see, and then which lines up with this hole that's drilled through that way. So now we have a hole on this side, and we have a hole on that side, halfway along the shaft, which is about corresponding with halfway along that shaft. So if I push this shaft in here, that's about where the holes line up. That is exactly where the holes line up. Now this shaft here is blanked off on that side, so it was drilled out to put all that stuff in there, but that was blanked off. And now I'll go back to this one on the cam. So it just, because that little O-ring or seal there, it would suck in that hole, push out that hole, suck in that hole, push out that hole, suck in that hole, push out that hole. So how that works is, as simple as it is, that hole on this side is where the oil goes in. It turns around, the cam pushes the other way, and it just pushes it out that side. So it's just this going in there, turning around from that worm drive. It turns it around, and it just sucks from this side, waits, and then pushes it out that side, and that's all it does. So you just got to put this thing back together the way you pulled it apart. I don't think there's much else to worry about, as long as you don't get your parts confused. I did forget one thing, and that was that cleaning this. Now I like to use, wash it and then petrol and whatever, and then electrical contact clean for blasting stuff out. Now inside here, there's this passage here that you want to clean out. Not much else that's easy to see. But now this is a press fit, and years ago I pulled one apart and I forced that off, and when I put it back, pushed it all back together again, I pulled it apart, got the spring and the ball bearing, cleaned it all up and put it back in again. I thought, geez, if that pops out, I'm in big trouble. So I didn't feel comfortable about it. So this time around I thought I'd look for a way of cleaning out, because if you were ever going to get like little bits and pieces of particles and stuff, it could jam up just in front of that ball bearing. Like, it would make it all the way through. There's no filters. It would make it all the way through here and then go in that little hole there and jam up in front of that ball bearing. It could lodge itself halfway in between that ball bearing there, and if it did that, it'd start leaking. So what I found is, if I got the electrical contact cleaner and just got the nozzle, and I don't know if you can see the angle here or not, but it just got the nozzle and forced the nozzle right on that spot there and just blasted. It came out of that hole in a big brown streak of oil and then just went clear. So I just kept doing it again. There's no point blasting this way because that hits the ball bearing, so nothing will go that direction. But once again, the electrical contact cleaner blasted it again this way, and quite a few times it was just coming out a solid stream. So that cleaned that out. And just to be sure, I did this side here, but this side doesn't do anything apart from going in that back void there. So just wanted to make sure I said that bit as far as cleaning goes. You can force that off and Loctite it back in again, but you don't have to. The oil pump plastic side cover also has that little ridge, so I have to be really careful when I clean that up so I don't flatten the ridge off.